Tonight, the search for answers after a deadly shooting at an American naval base.
We are looking very hard at uncovering his motive.
New details about the gunman and why the FBI presumes this was an act of terror. A fire tears through a factory in India, trapping workers inside.
Of course. Oh, well, gee.
Remembering the man who gave life to Sesame Street's most iconic characters.
We've got 150 kilometers of range left. We don't need to stop. We're gonna keep going. Bye.
And putting electric vehicles to the test. We're back on the road in our new series. This is The National. The details become more troubling by the day. Friday's mass shooting in Florida was already shocking because it happened on what should have been a secure military base. But today, there's disturbing new information about the lone Saudi gunman and what he had been doing ahead of the attack. And worse, the FBI says it's investigating if he was part of a larger network. Paul Hunter has more on that and those who died.
The procession passed through the streets of Pensacola, Florida today in silence. The 3 dead from Friday's shooting mourned. Some today hailed as heroes for trying to stop the shooter even after they were wounded. Tonight, investigators are focused on the growing questions around all of it.
And I would ask for patience so we can get this right.
Chief among them, why Mohammed al-Shamrani, a Saudi national and member of the Saudi Royal Air Force in the U.S. on official military flight training, walked into a U.S. naval building in Pensacola, Florida Friday, pulled out a handgun and began shooting. Though it's now standard practice, today this sobering early position.
We are, as we do in most active shooter investigations, work with the presumption that this was an act of terrorism.
Friends of the shooter, fellow Saudis also at the base for training, are now confined there and are said to be cooperating fully. But much is unknown. Moments before the shooting began, a Twitter account with a name similar to al-Shamrani posted anti-American messages. In the days and weeks before that, he's said to have traveled back home to Saudi Arabia, where, say some, he may have been radicalized. More recently, a trip to New York. Investigators don't know why. And in Florida, a dinner party in which he and 3 others watched videos of mass shootings. And there's more, with word that as the shooting was being carried out Friday, it was being recorded by one of his friends from that dinner party.
Some were detained, friends of his that were also on that base, as I understand it. And I also was told that some 1 or 2 were filming it. What's unclear is, were they filming it before it began, or was it something where they picked up their phones and filmed it once they saw it unfolding? Today, people pull out their phones and film everything and anything that happens.
In seeking answers to all of it, authorities continue to meet with other students at the base, other Saudis, other friends of the shooter, of which there are said to be many. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Now, the U.S. has been training soldiers from partner nations for decades, but today calls for that to change.
I think there's a frustration with this. I mean, you have foreign military personnel coming to our base. They should not be doing that if they hate our country.
So the gunman was one of more than 850 Saudis currently in the U.S. for military training. In all, more than 5,000 foreign military students are there from more than 150 countries. Yesterday, President Trump said a review of vetting procedures will begin immediately. Well, in New Delhi tonight, horrifying details are emerging about just what happened inside a factory that caught on fire, killing at least 43 people. The building went up in flames early this morning. Then came the wave of grief as loved ones crowded outside hospitals and mortuaries hoping for a miracle. As Marina von Stackelberg shows us, witnesses say many victims tried to get out but couldn't.
As the fire burned, emergency crews struggled just to get to the scene through the narrow streets of Delhi's congested Old Quarter. Inside the multi-story building, panic as people tried to flee but couldn't. Witnesses say they saw people on the roof screaming as the flames climbed. When help arrived, many had to be carried out. Up to 100 people were sleeping inside. This witness says many didn't wake up in time. sleeping because this wasn't just a factory, it was home to many workers, trying to save money while earning about $2 a day.
Police say when they went in, they saw that there was very little ventilation in that room where these laborers were sleeping. There was a staircase that could have possibly been used as an emergency exit, but that was blocked as well.
Many of the laborers were migrants from other parts of India. Their jobs, making all kinds of plastic goods, handbags, backpacks, hats, and other clothing items. In the panic, some of their loved ones say those trapped inside called them, begging for help.
There were no fire alarms, water sprinklers, or even fire extinguishers inside that building. And because it was a manufacturing unit, there was a lot of flammable material inside, things like plastic, cardboard, cloth, and that allowed that fire to spread very quickly.
This isn't the first time we've seen a disaster like this. In 2013, the collapse of a garment building in Bangladesh left more than 1,100 people dead. Employees there were making clothing for well-known brands, including the Canadian-owned Loblaw fashion line Joe Fresh. The disaster sparked global outcry. Officials in this case say a short circuit likely sparked the fire and are promising a thorough investigation. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now, in another Indian city just to the southeast, another scene of mourning today in the public spotlight. A funeral was held for the 23-year-old rape victim who was set on fire last week by a group of men that included her alleged rapists. The woman was on her way to court when she was beaten, stabbed, doused in kerosene. She died Friday in hospital. Police have arrested 5 suspects, including the 2 men accused of raping her at gunpoint a year ago. Well, it has been almost a year since Canadians Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig were detained in China, widely seen as retaliation for Canada's arrest of a Huawei executive just days before. They've been in custody ever since. And as Olivia Stefanovich explains, some are now calling for Ottawa to change its approach to secure their release.
2 Canadian nationals are being detained here.
Tonight we have confirmation that a second Canadian has been detained in China.
Chinese authorities have formally arrested 2 Canadians.
Close to 1 year since Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor's arrest, the 2 Canadians remain in solitary confinement. The lights in their cells on all hours of the day. Reading and writing are rare luxuries. Their only contact with the outside world comes from monthly consular visits. Still, those close to the detainees say they're hanging on.
He's strong, he's resilient, he maintains a sense of humor.
Meanwhile, the Huawei executive, whose detention is widely believed to have sparked their arrest, is out on bail, living in a Vancouver mansion.
Nobody is expecting that his conditions will match hers, but there's such a wide gulf that there's so many basic improvements that could be brought to him that we're hoping that the Chinese authorities would listen.
The Canadian government calls the welfare of Kovrig and Spavor an absolute priority. A spokesperson for Global Affairs says the new Foreign Affairs Minister raised the detention of the Canadians directly with his Chinese counterpart on his 3rd day on the job. He described the conversation to others as productive and quite long. But some members of Canada's diplomatic community say it's time to get tougher.
If we continue to make no response of any meaningful nature, we appear to be giving tacit consent to China to continue to engage in activities which violate the normal norms of diplomacy.
This former Canadian diplomat to China says Ottawa can send a strong signal to senior Chinese leadership right at home by targeting their children and grandchildren.
There's 146,000 Chinese students in Canada. The Canadian education system is highly prized. I think we should probably think about simply lifting their visa and sending them home.
But retaliation carries risk. They say the release of the 2 Canadians would take a diplomatic breakthrough. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, it's starting to look like a disturbing trend. Another shooting on a busy Toronto area highway, the 5th this year. And this time, a man died. As Philip Lee Shannock reports, police don't have a lot to go on, and they're asking for the public's help.
Images of the bullet-riddled car were captured on surveillance video. A man emerges with holes in his clothing. Police say he ran into a gas station and called 911, and they arrived within minutes.
The shooting took place on the 400 southbound.
Police say this was a targeted attack and took place on one of the 400 series highways that carry hundreds of thousands of cars through Canada's most populous region.
There's obviously a lot of potential for other injuries to have occurred if the driver had not been able to make it to this location. Yeah, it's a little bit scary.
2 men, a driver and a passenger, were wounded in the attack. A third, who was in the rear passenger seat, died in hospital. Today, police had the name of the dead man, but little else.
The deceased in this matter is Terrence Actual, AGTUAL, 28 years, of Toronto.
The 2 others who were shot have already left hospital. People in the community were shocked to learn one of the survivors is an imam who works with young Muslims trying to prevent violent incidents such as this one.
Now, who is immune now? Who will be saved from this? It's very strange. And we don't know what was the cause and who did it. And it was not expected that a person like him and a group that associated with him to be targeted.
This year, there have been 5 shootings on the region's 400 series highways, 2 of them only days apart last month. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, last night's highway violence is yet another example of increasing gun violence in Toronto, and 2019 has been a record-breaking year. According to police, the city has seen more than 450 shootings in 2019. That's up nearly 20% from last year. And with more shootings, more victims. Nearly 700 people have been shot this year. Well, the 150,000 commuters that rely on Vancouver's SkyTrain service every day are dreading the week to come. Its union has given notice that the system will be shut down between Tuesday and Friday unless they reach a deal. If they don't, it will be just the latest dispute to hit that area's transit network. Tanya Fletcher is following efforts to keep service on track.
It's massive impact. I cannot live or see the city surviving without the SkyTrain.
People are scrambling to make alternate plans. Many don't know how they'll get around.
So I have no idea. I don't even know how I'm going to get to work. I'm going to have to contact my boss and maybe he can hook up a ride, hopefully.
And in a region that relies heavily on transit, there are few alternatives.
The options are limited. I mean, this will be extremely disruptive.
TransLink, the authority in charge of transit, says 150,000 people use the system every day.
A lot of people are very angry, they're very upset, they're confused, particularly students. It's exam time. A lot of them, we've seen feedback, rely on the system to get to their exams. How are they doing that?
The 900 SkyTrain workers have been without an agreement since August. The union now claims the employer hasn't taken the latest round of bargaining seriously. Workers say wages, staffing levels, and forced overtime are driving the job action. It's been a tough fall for Metro Vancouver commuters. Recent job action by bus drivers caused weeks of delays and cancellations. Eventually, an 11th-hour deal prevented a full-blown strike, but without interference from the provincial government. Labor experts believe the NDP will remain at arm's length in this dispute, too.
This isn't a government that's going to look rapidly at either a short-term solution, intervention, or the longer-term designation of transport as an essential service. But an argument can be made for that.
Little comfort for commuters left to wait, watch, and worry about what'll happen if this stalemate isn't broken by the strike deadline. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
Okay, a developing story we are tracking out of Vancouver. Anita Bath standing by. Anita?
Andrew, at least one person is dead after a volcano erupted on New Zealand's White Island. Police say it's likely that number will go up, and right now there are many people who are still on the island and unaccounted for. You can see here people trying to be rescued. We know at least 23 people have made it off the island. Some are badly burned. This footage shows taken by a tourist who had just left, shows thick smoke blanketing the air. The eruption happened just after 2 p.m. New Zealand time, shooting a plume of ash 12,000 meters into the sky. Incredibly, that's not considered a large eruption and not big enough to carry debris to the mainland, but extremely dangerous for those nearby.
We are working at a pace to confirm the numbers of these involved. At this stage, it is too dangerous for police and rescue services to go to the island. However, we continue to assess the conditions which would allow us to go onto the island. The island is currently covered in ash and volcanic material.
That ash is making it hard to see if there are people alive and still stuck. Experts say they can't be certain there won't be another eruption in the next 24 hours. White Island is situated about 50 kilometers off the northeast side of New Zealand's mainland. Daily tours see around 10,000 people visiting the volcano each year. Now, about a minute before the volcano erupted, there was a group seen walking near the crater rim. And I just want to reiterate, we do know one person has died, several others are unaccounted for, and a number of people are badly hurt. We'll keep watching this developing story throughout the evening.
Well, having your vehicle recalled for a safety issue may be a hassle, but it's typically free, right? And gives you peace of mind. Imagine then shelling out thousands on a repair only to find out there's a recall on the part. And as Rosa Marcatelli from our Go Public team found out, some automakers are telling drivers they don't qualify.
That's the sound of the second engine Rick Lingard had to pay to put into his 2011 Hyundai Tucson after experiencing 2 complete engine failures within just weeks. He's on the hook for both, despite the SUV being part of a major recall that was issued before the breakdowns.
I'm out $8,700 almost for engines and towing and all that kind of stuff.
When Lingard contacted Hyundai about the breakdowns, he said no one mentioned anything about a recall. He only learned about the recall when he got the official notice in the mail, the one car makers are legally obligated to send. Hyundai didn't inspect either engine, but it rejected Lingard's claim anyway, saying the first breakdown was caused by too few oil changes and the second engine wouldn't be covered either because it wasn't inspected or installed by Hyundai.
That's really disappointing.
Donna Stewart and Scott Wild are fighting the same battle with Hyundai's sister company, Kia. The engine in their 2013 Sportage needed replacing after also failing at high speeds. Despite a recall, they too aren't covered.
Almost pleaded with them, saying that, how can this be that our vehicle is not on the list?
Kia says the couple's engine model differs from the ones under recall, and they couldn't prove how often the oil was changed. An automotive consumer advocate says using oil changes as a reason to deny claims is common but puzzling, since the car makers have already acknowledged in some cases the problem is caused by debris left in the engines during manufacturing.
So whether you did oil changes or not, the debris was already there.
More than a year ago, Transport Canada was given the power to force recalls, but it's never used it. So car companies still dictate when to recall and who will be covered. Drivers say Transport Canada needs to do more.
Transport Canada have told us unless there's a fatality, a lot of stuff does not happen. Man, that's way too late.
The Transportation Authority is looking into 65 complaints about being left out of the Hyundai and Kia recalls. Stewart and Wild's case is among them. The couple is now waiting to see what, if anything, the agency does about it. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
And if you have a story you'd like our Go Public team to look into, you can get in touch with them at gopublic@cbc.ca. Okay, more news ahead on The National, including a big loss for Sesame Street. The man behind Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch has died. We'll look at his legacy. And a single banana worth $120,000 now gone. I'll explain next. Maybe you've heard about the banana duct taped to a wall. If you haven't, all you need to know is it was art displayed at a gallery in Florida worth tens of thousands of dollars and now gone. Because as Anita Bath shows us, one artist's masterpiece can be another artist's meal.
Perhaps a fitting end for a ripening banana taped to an art gallery wall.
Hungry artist.
Peeled and eaten, all while a stunned crowd looks on.
Yes.
That snack was a piece of art titled Comedian, created by famous artist Maurizio Cattelan. He'd already sold it for $120,000. This piece was on show in Miami when performance artist David DeTuna got a little hungry.
Okay, come with me.
See you after jail, guys.
And the saga continues. Now the replacement banana gone, and the wall appears to have been vandalized.
Catalan's banana art was intended as a symbol of global trade and a double entendre. Ever slipped on a banana peel? Typical of the Art Basel show, which also featured this as a nod to Greta Thunberg, a How Dare You ice sculpture in a pool. The piece, titled Climate Meltdown, lasted about 8 hours. And this one, a giant traffic jam made entirely out of sand, touching on the climate crisis and rising sea levels.
Art performance.
The banana, also not a permanent piece of art. It would eventually ripen, and while there were no instructions for the buyer on what to do then. It's not the first piece by Catalan to be stolen. Earlier this year, this 18-karat solid gold toilet titled America, and it's never been recovered. In this case, Datuna didn't eat the only comedian banana. This was one of 3, all of which sold for more than $100,000. Anita Bath, CBC News, Vancouver.
When we come back, we're digging into electric vehicles, starting with David Common, who is back on the road, and he's made some changes after his last trip, all to see if your electric vehicle can go the distance. That's next. But first, tributes are pouring in tonight for one of Sesame Street's original icons, the man behind the bird and the grouch.
I talk like this, but somehow it comes out a little different nuance. And here I am.
Oh boy, this is gonna be a fun day. What a nice surprise.
Carol Spinney spent a lifetime inhabiting icons of childhood.
Don't tell all my secrets. Oh, they're my secrets, but...
He based Oscar on the surly cabbie he took to his first day on the show.
Hey, 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 step right up, step right up. See the angry man, only a nickel.
As for Big Bird, Spinney actually took the character away from its goofy origins.
I realized that he should maybe be a kid, not the village idiot.
And so, as a perpetual 6-year-old, Big Bird taught kids it was okay to make mistakes and okay to be vulnerable.
Big Bird, when people die, they don't come back.
Ever?
No, never.
Spinney was capable of surprising grace in that 8-foot-tall costume, and he worked that suit for 46 years.
He's 6. He still is 6, and I'm 80. So I'm the world's oldest child star.
Spinney died at his Connecticut home. He was 85. Activist Greta Thunberg made a brief stop at an alternative climate summit being held in Madrid. It was staged on the sidelines of the United Nations Climate Summit, and staying true to her values, she left in an electric car. Now, with concerns over climate change increasing, there's been a surge in demand for electric vehicles. So this week on The National, we're taking a special look at those cars. Can supply meet demand, and are they really the greenest way to get around? Well, David Common tried one out back in February to see how an electric vehicle would fare on a road trip.
How did things go so wrong? How'd we end up driving with no heat at night outside Detroit, late for an appointment, and about to run out of the fuel we need? It's our first adventure with a fully electric car, and it began by renting Arthur Pott's entry-level, battery-only vehicle.
Welcome.
How are you?
Very well indeed. Good to see you.
This is it.
This is it, the Kia Soul. I save maybe $3,000, $3,500 a year in gasoline.
Drivers are still shy of battery-only offerings, no gas engine at all. So what's holding us back? That's 4 things: cost to buy, range, how far they can go between charging, whether there are enough charging stations, and the time it takes to recharge. Along with producer Jill and videographer Ed, I'm testing those out on this journey.
Yeah, so tomorrow we head to Detroit.
Yikes. Overnight, we're using a level 1 charger, the smallest and slowest there is.
The car is at 86%, and it could actually take 5 more hours of charging to get up to 100%. That's okay. This is enough for what we need to do today. And what are we doing? Well, it's actually a little bit risky. We are going 400 kilometers all the way to Detroit. It's a big road trip in an electric vehicle, one we've never done.
Jill is using an app to track where we can recharge along the way, and we can use that app to pay for the top-ups as well.
Okay, never done this before, so let's see. Plug the charging connector into your vehicle. I think it's this one. Or is it? No? Yeah. That looks right. Yeah. So here we go. The app actually says how long it's been, how long it's costing me. It's $20 an hour to do this, but this is a fast charger, so it's gonna go pretty quickly. 20% charged right now.
The stop gives us time to make a call. A chat with an EV expert, Simon Willett of Charge Hub.
Hi, Simon.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, it's okay. We're on our first stop. So we got about 100 kilometers, and you can see it. Here we are with our car and our charging station, and it's at 65% right now after only about 10 minutes. What do we need to know about sort of maximizing our mileage, our range?
Cabin heat takes up a lot more energy, so dress warm, that'll get you a lot of extra miles.
We're at 80% right now, so I think I'm gonna wrap this call up with you because we're gonna disconnect and hit the road.
Back on the road, and the heat's turned way down to extend our range.
Uh-oh.
And after another 100 kilometers, time for another stop.
Pretty soon we'll be redlining it. Oh, there you go. Okay, just pulled off the highway here. Not quite running on fumes, but we got 16 kilometers of range left. So we really pushed the limit on this one.
300 meters. Turn right on Wellington Road.
There we go.
So I think for this stop, we're going to want to go above 80%. The next stop is 116 kilometers away, and there's nothing between here and there.
Okay, get the app out. $20 an hour to use this. We'll probably use it for about half an hour.
After lunch and back on the road for half an hour, and that's when things start to go wrong.
We should have taken a different exit.
Oh, is that why you're saying that? Okay.
Yeah.
Are we way off? How far off of our plan are we relative to where our next charging station is? This says there's 2 stations available. Like, what are we close to here? We could go backwards.
I don't think we should go backwards.
But we have to find something in front of us.
So, a new route it is.
Okay, time for recharge, and not a moment too soon. We're only about 10 kilometers of range left. All right, it's charging, 9% already. Might as well get something warm inside.
Okay, let me think.
None of this was part of the plan. We're now late, supposed to be in Detroit in less than an hour with no chance of making it. And now, another issue.
The charger we're plugged into is not charging at the rate we've become accustomed to. It's going slower.
Time to phone a friend. Simon's our EV lifeline.
We ended up taking a different route than we'd planned, and so we didn't go to the charger that we'd planned. We found another charger. We're at that charger, but it's taking much longer than we thought it would, even though it's still a level 3. Why is that?
Usually you'll see 50 kilowatts, so that's probably what you've been charging at most of the day today, but now you've probably hit one that is throttled down to a lower power.
It's about 100 kilometers from here to there, and our car is not charged up sufficiently for that right now.
Oh, we got no, 107.
107? Okay, so I'm going to go out and see if we got that much. %. That's not going to be enough. So our range right now is 78 kilometers. It's not enough to get us to Detroit. So I think we're probably going to have to wait it out. The alternative is driving to a faster charger than this one, but it's a bit of a gamble.
We have just enough range remaining to make it, but not enough time. We need to speed up, and doing so reduces the range faster. To compensate, we're turning all the heat off, and it gets very cold very fast. But we do make it to the auto show just before it closes.
Okay, we made it.
To meet Paul Rzuski of the Toronto Electric Vehicle Association.
Thanks so much for waiting for us. Okay, my hands are frozen, my feet are frozen. We had to turn everything off in order to get here. Here's my thing. People are gonna look at what we've done and they're gonna say, uh-oh, I don't know about an EV.
The good news is that you drove a previous generation electric car. So over there is the same car you were driving. It's being introduced with more than double the size of the battery.
In other words, we could have made it without recharging, or maybe recharging once. A very different kind of story, and gives you a sense of where EVs are headed.
It makes you realize how, in just 2 years, a single car model has really extended its range. There are some lessons, though. EVs certainly can be affordable and seem great for city commutes. But not all models are suitable for longer road trips. Still, progress is happening, and happening quickly. Longer ranges, shorter recharges, and more charging stations.
Now, we got a lot of feedback about that story from people who wanted us to see how quickly electric vehicles are changing. So we asked David to try out the road trip again to see the difference, this time using the latest version of the car the team saw at the Detroit Auto Show.
Hey,
Hi,
David.
Ken.
How are you?
I'm good. What is
Good.
this?
This is a 2020 Kia Soul EV, the new version.
And with it comes a range close to 400 kilometers. We're borrowing this one from the manufacturer, Kia, no strings attached. The change in range is making road trips like this so much easier. We're heading back to Detroit, car capital of the world, to see the latest electric vehicle to have hit the market. And this time, instead of 3 charging stops, we're only going to need 1.
We got 150 kilometers of range left, but at this point during the last trip, we had only about 20 kilometers of range, so big difference this time. So there's our charger from last time, more than 300 kilometers of range still, so we don't need to stop. We're gonna keep going. Bye. Look over there, 4 new charging stations. That gives you an idea that there's just so much more charging capability.
We were on track to cut more than 2 hours off our original journey until we screwed up.
We are slightly off course. Yes, this happened in the last story, and yes, this would seem to be staged, but no, it is not. It's just us.
But unlike last time, when we thought we wouldn't even make it to the next charger, this time, no problem. New battery ranges give us the cushion all the way to Motor City and Ford's headquarters.
This is a very classic, strong, athletic Mustang Q, and had to be interpreted for the SUV version of it, and I think the design team did a fantastic job.
The president of Ford in North America, Kumar Galhotra, showing off the changing face of electric vehicles.
0 to 60 for the GT version is going to be under 4 seconds.
Really fast.
Really fast,
Yeah.
300 seconds.
No longer a geek mobile, they're getting bigger because consumers still like big vehicles like SUVs.
There's a huge market segment of Mustang enthusiasts who want a vehicle like this because it's more versatile. It gives them room for family, friends, for cargo.
And it's a Mustang, America's original muscle car, now in electric. You like it? You gotta get in line. One version of this EV sold out in just over a week. And that's something of a trend for many battery-powered models.
How long did you have to wait for it?
5 months.
It's just unfortunate there's not enough supply to supply the demand that there is for them.
Over the next couple of nights, we'll be looking at what's holding electric vehicle sales back and what's being done to spur them on.
If Canada nationwide adopted the same policy that British Columbia just put into place, that alone, I'm very confident, would have the strongest impact, increasing electric vehicle sales, not just in the next couple of years, but in the decades to come.
We're also examining just how green these cars really are. What about how their batteries are made, or where the electricity comes from?
Electric vehicles are better for the environment, but they're not some utopia.
There's very few things that are utopian.
And you can catch more of David's series right here tomorrow night on The National. But when we come back, a rare look at the desperation inside war-torn regions of eastern Ukraine. And remember those candid, unscripted comments from the Prime Minister? Well, they got the Saturday Night Live treatment, and you will not want to miss it. That's next.
Gear up for a new season of the show that's being called a killer comedy. Heartwarming and hilarious. Both funny and deep.
Check it out!
Kim's Convenience on CBC and CBC Gem.
I'm Jamie Poisson, and tomorrow on CBC's daily news podcast Front Burner, the United Kingdom goes to the polls later this week, and we discuss why this could be the most important election since World War II. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thousands rallied in central Kiev. They don't want Ukraine caving to Russia when their president meets with Vladimir Putin. The fear is Ukraine could give up too much in order to end the war with Russia in the country's east, especially after events now at the heart of Washington's impeachment drama.
The Ukrainians, in particular under this new administration, are eager to end this war.
Trump temporarily withheld military aid to Ukraine and still hasn't granted the Ukrainian president a meeting at the White House. According to Democrats, that's deliberate, a way of pressuring Ukraine to investigate Trump's political opponents.
He had a desperate man on the phone, and he asked a desperate man for a favor.
Can we also agree that it's just wrong?
According to top diplomats, it has already cost Ukraine critical leverage.
If we withdraw or threaten to withdraw our security assistance, that's a message to the Ukrainians, but it's at least as important to the Russians.
On the ground, the war has killed 14,000 people, and it's torn eastern Ukraine's Donbass region to shreds. Chris Brown gives us a rare look inside the war zone where people are exhausted.
There's no easy way for outsiders to see the obliterated landscape of eastern Ukraine. The airport in Donetsk, the largest city in the separatist-held area, was destroyed and never rebuilt. 6 years of war has left this place ruined. Our CBC crew that made it in heard a resounding desperation for a deal to bring peace to what many here feel is a forgotten conflict. We met a group of older women living a miserable existence underground in a former Soviet-era bunker near Donetsk. Their lives are as emotionally shattered as the countryside above.
Ну, я хочу, чтобы уже мир был, чтобы мы уже вышли отсюда, чтобы уже и люди жили, чтобы дети были нормально, чтобы в школу ходили, чтобы все было хорошо.
There's no heat, but at least there's running water and electricity, and they're safe from the shelling and the snipers.
5 лет, 6-й год идет война. Отечественная шла 4 года. А это что такое? 6-й год. Что это за... Я не понимаю. Мы не понимаем.
Everyone down here is united in survival, but they're divided on the future of this territory.
Донецк все равно же принадлежит Украине. Как был украинский, так еще остался. России так такого нету. В Россию пошел. Ну, в Россию, для того, чтобы еще пошел, навряд ли Россия возьмет.
All are aware that Ukraine suddenly became big news in the United States because of the U.S. impeachment saga, but it's not changed any of the misery in their lives.
Тоже не знаю как. Как решиться, лишь бы быстрее закончилась война. Вот,
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to get this area back under Ukrainian control. He's helped orchestrate a modest pullback of troops, but the fighting hasn't entirely stopped. In the village of Zaitsova, Masha and her grandmother Svetlana told our crew that barely a night goes by where they don't hear shooting. They say they've even found mines that were fired by artillery that landed in their garden.
На огород мы тоже через раз выходим, потому что мы не можем, предсказать, когда будет обстрел, а когда нет.
И у нас он все позаделано этим самым.
Svetlana told us she feels her home is a disposable pawn in a bigger fight between Russia and the West.
Мы не нужны ни в Украине, ни в России, потому что Донбасс разбит. Украине такой ярмо не надо, и России тоже такой ярмо не надо.
Masha let our crew come with her to school, which has been hit by shells twice and rebuilt. These 10 and 11-year-olds have lived with war for as long as they can remember.
Я хочу, чтобы больше не стреляли, чтобы все дома же восстановили, чтобы все ходили с улыбками и чтобы больше не погибали люди. Мир, здравие и спокойствие.
Eastern Ukraine is more than the front line of a civil war. It's at the epicenter of a battle for global influence between the West and Russia, with exhausted, desperate innocents feeling that both sides have abandoned them. Chris Brown, CBC News, Moscow.
The talks tomorrow between Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin will be the first serious effort at peace in 3 years. Okay, when we come back, a viral ad that sparked backlash and ridicule online. The woman at the center of it all gets a new beginning of sorts. Hear from her next. But first.
Oh, look, it's Trudeau and Macron. They're so cool.
In case you missed it, Saturday Night Live's Cold Open did the last NATO summit as basically high school.
That's what it's like to hang out with the cool guys.
With France's Emmanuel Macron, Britain's Boris Johnson, and Canada's Justin Trudeau as the cool kids.
Hey guys, is this seat taken? Sorry, actually it is.
And the US president as the loser.
Someone say something about a party? Oh, I don't think you'd want to go. You'd have to walk upstairs.
It spoofs a summit that had its own drama, with Trudeau caught on camera in a dish session on Trump. Trump was all like,
well, he's too fast.
And Trudeau was all like,
I have a very good relationship with President Trump and his team.
And Bojo was like,
do you not take President Trump seriously?
What? No, bro.
That's complete nonsense. And I don't know where that's come from.
There can be a lot of truth in comedy.
Well, I'm Boris's friend, right, Boris?
Don't make this harder than it already is, old man.
But if NATO is high school, it's worth remembering the unpopular kid here has the world's most powerful military, a thin skin, and a rocky time ahead in Washington. A familiar face in a not-so-familiar scene. This is actor Monica Ruiz, better known to many as the Peloton wife. But that could be changing. Now, she shot to fame after featuring in an ad for those high-end stationary bikes, but it wasn't the good kind of fame. As things often do on social media, backlash over the ad spiraled into something much bigger, and so now Ruiz is speaking out, starting fresh, and that is our moment.
A Peloton? Give it up for our first-time rider.
Right, first ride.
So this is the ad that started it all. In it, a husband gives his wife the gift of exercise.
6 a.m. Yay.
And then the criticism rolled in. The company accused of being sexist, Ruiz accused of overacting and having, quote, hostage eyes. In a statement, she told us, to say I was shocked and overwhelmed by the attention this week, especially the negative, is an understatement. Adding, she's not actually comfortable being in the spotlight, but she is now. And she's not hiding from how it all started, appearing in a new ad for Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds gin.
This gin is really smooth.
Yeah. We can get you another one if you'd like.
You're safe here.
Same hostage eyes, but as Reynolds pointed out, exercise bike not included. Cheers to new beginnings. So since the original Peloton ad came out, Peloton took a big hit in terms of its stock price, actually losing about 15% on its value. But late last week, that actually started rebounding a little bit. The ad is not hard to find. It's still up online. And, well, people are still talking about it. That's The National for this Sunday, December 8th. Have a good night.